Hi. We're at the last session, I understand, of Cloud Next, so thank you for showing up. I know it's been a long 3 days, but hopefully, thought-provoking and interesting for you. We are going to be talking about Meet, video conferencing, hybrid work, and this will be a moderated panel, and we have our guests on stage. I am Haruko. I'm Haruko. I work on Workspace and Meet partnerships for Google. And with me, we have Thomas Iwasaki from Brandlive, Brian Thomas from Lenovo, and Dan Lawyer from Lucid. All right. Thomas.
Sure.
What do you do at Brandlive?
Hello, everyone. I'm Thomas from Brandlive, where I run the product organization. At Brandlive, we're really focused on reinventing larger meetings, specifically presentation-based meetings, things like town halls, webinars, that type of thing. And our products are designed to help hosts put on well-produced, differentiated, compelling content for those occasions that sits apart from the day-to-day world of video conferencing in some cases. And this edition of Cloud Next is a very special moment for us and our partnership with Google, as we're actually here announcing a product integration with Google Meet, which we're quite excited about. And there's another session about on demand if you want to learn more.
Great. Thanks, Thomas. What about you, Brian? Can you do
so thanks for having me here today. I'm excited to be here at Google Next. My name is Brian Thomas. I'm the Senior Director of Smart Collaboration Portfolio and Alliances at Lenovo. Our business is really focused on helping our customers implement hybrid work solutions for both in the office and at home employees. As part of that effort, we've partnered with Google and Google Series 1 over the last 3 years to deliver a room solution that really helps our customers get the most out of their meeting room experiences through leveraging both audio and video AI technologies, and be happy to talk a little bit more about that today. And we've got a booth down below where we can demonstrate that as well.
Great. Thanks, Brian. And then Dan.
Yeah, I'm Dan Lawyer. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Lucid Software. And Lucid has had a long history with Google. We've enjoyed a partnership with them for a long time. In fact, back in 2010, that's in the Wayback Machine, we were one of the launch partners with the Workspace marketplace. And we've been building integrations ever since. We've enjoyed a really good kind of top-level leadership engagement with Lucid. One of our co-founders and now chairman of the board, it was an early Googler, was over patents and business development, things like that. And so we've had a lot of relationships over time with Google. And together, it's been really fun as Google has built out their product suite, we built out our product suite, and together we've been able to help millions of people to really experience the value of visual collaboration as they've engaged and used what is now 13 integrations that we've done with Google Workspace, and more to come. We have yet more integrations that we think still need to be there, so we're excited about it.
Thanks, Dan. All right. Just before we dive into the questions, I want to frame the conversation a bit about where we are today. And I know the previous session was talking about productivity. We're going to focus on hybrid work and Meet. There's lots of words that have been floating around here that are similar, but we've gotten back to the office, but video meetings have stayed, and we've continued to have the need for real-time communications. And hybrid work requires effort, and we want to make sure that everyone is able to participate in discussions and feel connected. And many organizations, I think, are looking for better tools to engage in attendees and make video feel as close to in-person connections as possible. And as part of that effort, Google has addressed these challenges by engaging in a growing number of our ecosystem partners, 3 of whom are here today. And a lot of our partners are in enterprise productivity tools, engagement tools used in the classrooms, digital collaboration tools, and hardware partners like Lenovo, who help us build the best-in-class meeting experiences. And I'm looking forward to hearing how our leaders in industry are thinking of hybrid work. Awesome. Great. So we will dive into the questions, the current state of communication and productivity tools. So Thomas, let's start with you. Trends, challenges, opportunities. What are the challenges you see in meeting and collaboration? What kinds of issues are companies facing? And what are the biggest areas of opportunity?
Sure. So trend-wise, I think maybe I'll start from an employee or an end user perspective. It is easier than ever to meet. We are working hybrid or remote, and so we're hopping on meetings and more compelled to meet than ever before. Meeting technology is built into all of the tools that we're using on a day-to-day basis, and this fluid communication style leads to more meetings all the time. And from a company perspective, so taking the flip side, you see an increase in the volume of meetings, and we have more communication channels in some cases than we know how to deal with or know how to manage. And so it's important, I think, as companies look at the effect coming out of the pandemic and moving into a hybrid world, it's important to think about the tools that you're offering to employees, because work is going to occupy the tool set or the channels that you offer it. And so companies, as they see some alarming trends perhaps to some folks in terms of the volume of meetings and the time spent in meetings relative to work before the pandemic, need to take into consideration meeting culture as an aspect of culture at large, and potentially an area where you can think about creating competitive advantages inside of your team and your organization.
Great. Okay. All right, Brian.
So,
how do you think about this?
So from my perspective and at Lenovo, we're continually hearing about back to office initiatives from our customers. They're all struggling to find the sweet spot on that. And the fact of the matter is, we're seeing really no customers that are successfully implementing a full back to office environment. And so that really creates hybrid as the trend, right? I mean, we're talking about hybrid, but hybrid is the reality of the situation. And how do we deal with an environment where you have some employees in the office and some employees that are remote? So that's really the key trend we're seeing. But the challenge that we see on that is really around when you're looking to try to get employees back into the office. We only have about 15%, actually fewer than that, of meeting spaces that are video enabled. So we're coming from a space where employees have been at home and all of their meetings have been video enabled, and then you're trying to get them back into an office where they're likely to walk into a space and they're going to have a conference call speakerphone on the table and they have no video. And that's not an appealing environment to get someone back in the office to have that type of trade-off and experience. So that's the key challenge that we see. That kind of brings us on to an opportunity. So obviously, if we're able to video enable those rooms with basic video, USB camera, USB video, that's good, but it creates an opportunity in what we call an equitable meeting space. So when you look at just basic USB video, USB audio in a video space, yes, you're getting a video stream out, but it's not an equitable experience. So you're used to, in the pandemic, this mass video adoption where everybody really had an equal playing field, right? Everybody would look the same in the meeting. They had the same level of visual and audio experience. When you go into an office space, you have this unequal plane where the people in the office have a single video stream and the people that are remote are struggling to see who's in the space, who's saying what the reactions are, et cetera. So creating that equitable meeting experience is the opportunity that we have, and the technologies that we have, such as our Google Series 1 room system, that's what it was designed to do, is to try to deliver a more equitable experience in that meeting room space. So when you come back into the office, you're not having any type of trade-off. Remote participants are able to be seen and heard. People in the office are able to be seen and heard, and it's an equitable experience across the board.
Yeah, it's almost like the office is behind the virtual experiences.
Right.
What about you, Dan?
Well, it's interesting. I think we've all seen this really dramatic shift in how people work. And I don't think any of us think that that's going to be isolated to just a few years post-pandemic. It's probably here to stay. And so as we engage with our customers, we've noticed several trends, and maybe I'll just cap off on 3 of them real quick. Like the first thing that we're seeing is during the pandemic, you saw these IT teams in particular do amazing things to enable their workforces, and the amount of change that was introduced and what they had to do. They were doing things in 2 or 3 days that they would have taken months or years to do to just enable their teams. Now what we're seeing is that they're going back and they're having to rationalize all of those decisions. They're trying to figure out how do they streamline their tech stack? How do they simplify their spend and reduce their spend? How do they increase productivity? And they're looking to do that by standardizing on their software portfolio. So that's one trend. The second trend we're seeing, of course, ties to hybrid work, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. But they're trying to figure out what is our approach to hybrid work? How do we enable our teams? How do we facilitate hybrid work in a way that we don't lose the creativity and the innovation, that we can keep teams together and connected and aligned as they go through their work together? And so they're looking for solutions to make sure the teams are equipped in a way to continue to facilitate that. And then the third trend that I'll bring up today really comes to, while companies tend to be as innovative and really push the envelope on innovation as much as ever before, their tolerance for failure in that innovation process seems lower than ever before. And so they're looking for how do we help our teams of knowledge workers to be able to more reliably predict, what are the investments, what are the projects that are going to succeed and they're going to win, they're going to help us to, quickly execute and be able to, maintain or gain market share or be able to create a new revenue stream or be able to create that really delightful customer experience and do it in a way where there's likely less failure in the process. And these cross-functional teams, they need solutions that help them to get those products to market or their solutions out to their workforce faster. And be able to do that all the way from like the earliest idea through to where now it's a reality. And so Lucid is leaning in across the board with our customers and our partners to try and solve all those problems, a little bit for us to do.
Yeah, the bar is definitely higher, and I think that's a good thing. Okay, so hybrid work. Brian, we're going to start with you. How many companies have remote and on-site, as you talked about. How can meeting technology support effective collaboration? We are behind. There's a need to update the offices to have better technologies in the office. What strategies do you recommend for organizations? And how can companies provide flexibility, boost engagement, foster better connections?
Yeah, so great question on that. So as I stated before, meeting equity is the key opportunity, all right? And we're looking to bring technology forward to help address this through leveraging AI in both audio and video experience that is delivered for both the remote and the local participants. Now, first, we'll talk about video. So, at the very basic level with video AI, we're doing things such as identifying things in the room, such as whiteboards. We're identifying the whiteboards, we're applying keystone and image correction and enhancement to those whiteboards, and we're passing that over through video to the remote participants so they can see what's going on in that room and feel like they're part of that room and that experience. But that's just the first step. The next step from a video standpoint, as I said before, was how do we take that single video stream of a room where you might have somebody sitting 15 feet away from the camera at the end of the table, and that person might be the most important person in the room, the leader in the room. And how do we take that experience and enhance that? Well, we're doing that through really doing multiple video streams. So we can take a single video stream, we can start to enhance that and provide multiple video streams so individuals in the room can start to be pulled out and presented in an individual video stream to the remote participants. That allows those remote participants to be able to more easily see what's going on in the room, the reactions of the people in the room to things they may be saying or what other people may be saying, bringing, again, those remote participants into the room. That's on a video side. And on audio side, again, we're looking to leverage AI to enhance the audio experience. Again, for remote participants, how do we use audio AI to remove background noise, right? Annoying things such as keyboards clicking, bags crunching, background conversations that might be happening in a more open meeting environment. That's actually a leadership position that we have with Google Series 1. We've got some of the best capabilities on audio filtering so that those remote participants aren't distracted by these background noises and they're able to hear clearly what's going on in the meeting, engage with people in the meeting. The next step of it is using AI to align spatial audio. So, we are all used to that Brady Bunch view that we see of a meeting space with people, scattered throughout on the board. And we've all had that experience when we've been in our home office where somebody starts speaking and we're searching throughout that Brady Bunch board for who is it that's talking. Well, with positional audio, when you have that screen at the front of the room inside a meeting room, you can start to have a right-hand side speaker matched to a right-hand side person. As that person starts speaking, the audio comes out of there. The audio is a clear view to you to turn your head and engage your eyes in the direction of that to help the people in the room better understand who's speaking and provide a little bit less confusion in that experience. So the implementation of these technologies really creates a more collaborative, engaging work experience, helps to make employees have a better overall experience and be more productive overall.
Great, thanks. Dan, how do you think about hybrid work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of all the stuff that Brian and his company is doing to like facilitate that. The video conference, the communication, that part. The communication is one side, collaboration is another part of it, and they kind of work hand in hand. And I think the old ways that people worked, the old ways that people collaborated, were really dependent on doing things exclusively in person. And I think that during the pandemic, there was this really rapid rate of change that put a lot of pressure on these collaboration patterns. And it really brought to the forefront a lot of things that were broken that maybe we had just become numb to or we'd gotten used to, and then suddenly it doesn't work anymore. And so I think a lot of that pain comes down to a really fundamental problem, which is that language, whether it's written or spoken language, is imprecise. And so humans spend a lot of time trying to understand each other. And we've come up with all these ways over time to try and augment that communication. So whether that's writing on a cave wall or writing on a whiteboard, which are remarkably similar behaviors, separated by thousands of years, right? But there's really, really similar behaviors. Or we get into the same room so that we can see each other's body language. Or we create a visual and we get in the same room. It's that pattern of the past where it was like just so dependent on being in the same time, in the same place with somebody so we could have that visual experience together to augment the communication. So visual collaboration is a solution for that. It goes beyond that and it helps teams so that they can work together visually. We often talk about it as side by side on the same canvas, whether that's in real time or asynchronously, regardless of where they're located at in the world. And so it's a fantastic solution for bridging those gaps. And it's one of the main reasons behind our Lucid Spark web add-on for Google Meet. It enables users to collaborate together during any call, and really pretty much any meeting that a team is involved with, a workshop or meeting, a session, is going to be improved if they do some planning ahead of time on this canvas, if they facilitate and then do follow-up on a shared canvas together, is going to enhance that experience for them. So the visual collaboration enables teams in a hybrid work environment to be able to communicate and collaborate in the way that they work best. That's visually. And it supports teams not just in that upfront ideating, but really it needs to support them on that entire journey from the earliest idea all the way through reality. So we often think about this idea to reality journey and how we need to support hybrid work throughout that whole journey.
Thanks, Dan. Thomas, you're in a slightly different space than Dan's world, but how do you think about hybrid work?
Yes. Well, I mean, first of all, without meeting equity, there is no hybrid work, and collaboration, as Dan was sharing, hand in hand with that. But I will, I guess, take our conversation to think about communication and meeting at different scales. And at Brandlive, we really think about the importance of large-scale meetings. So that might be a department-wide, it might be a company-wide, it might just be a new presentation or a meaningful presentation introducing concepts that are meant to align the audience or energize the audience. And those occasions, in a hybrid sense, are even more important than ever before because you have folks who are not in the same place. The energy in the room is not a concept that exists when you have half of the attendees joining on a video call. And so we would really, we really push our customers and our partners to invest in those occasions when they will be presenting to a broader audience. And the benefits are multiple, but a couple benefits are, it's those occasions and the quality that you put forward when you're engaging the entire company, it sets the tone for the communication that should happen underneath inside of the organization. And they also help to create the right focus. We're distributed, we're hybrid, and so those come together moments, those times when we have the opportunity to create alignment, we need to invest in those occasions and make sure that they stand out from the day-to-day. Whether we're talking about a typical hour-long presentation, or whether we're breaking meetings into shorter chunks meant to be consumed synchronously, we need to be thinking about making meeting content in those larger occasions that's worth watching. It can't look like it can't look like a recording of a stand-up or a recording of the meeting that everybody just clicked over from. When there's a more important message, when there's a broader audience, it's important to invest in that in a hybrid sense, because those opportunities to leverage focus and alignment across the organization are more important as folks are spread across different locations.
Awesome. Okay, last topic. AI for meetings. We're going to start with you, Dan. Can businesses use AI for meetings? What's already available? How does AI evolve the way we meet and communicate? And what does it enable for the future?
Yeah, so I mean, the short answer is yes. Yes, they can use it. And then there's obviously a longer answer in there. But it's been fascinating to see the evolution of AI like so rapidly. And as I've watched it and seen what's happening, it's like there's this core group of entities that are evolving and building things at the core, like LLMs, like Bard, right? Then there's a whole other ecosystem that's building on top of that really rapidly. And as I look at it, it's funny because sometimes I see all the experiments happening on top of these LLMs, and I'm like, it kind of looks like random acts of AI. Like it's not it's not always comprehensive or holistic or even meaningful at times. But that's the nature of experimentation, right? That's the nature of rapid learning. So it's okay. And then we are starting to see sweet spots though, where like AI is doing really, really well. For example, one of the use cases that we see and that you've probably all experienced is AI is great at summarizing content. It's like home run every time that I use it for that. And so that can be a summary during or after a meeting, right, that it does that. At Lucid, the way that we're thinking about it, we recently released our first beta of a series of features we call collaborative AI. And our customers seem to appreciate that the way we did it wasn't random. It was focused on one really specific workflow. It was on this workflow of how do you help a team in their brainstorming process, so from the earliest part of ideation to kind of synthesizing the thoughts, summarizing that content, turning it into actionable insights. So a complete workflow assisted by AI to help a team get through it. And we think there's a lot more that we can do that way that will help teams in the context of meetings or in their day-to-day work. And we kind of chunk it into 4 categories. The first, of course, is generative AI, which we're all used to. And the use case there in a Lucid context is you could say or write some prompt that would basically say, hey, an example would be, the last prompt I did was, show me a diagram of how to determine work eligibility in the United States. And it could just generate that for you. Wouldn't that be nice? And so that's one example of the generative. Then we go to a category we call assistive. And assistive is interesting. You can almost think of it as where AI becomes the user interface. And so it's like you've got some set of content, and instead of like the old school way, which is the old school is as a team or as an individual, I have to go and click around the user interface and figure out where stuff is and invoke different features and capabilities. The new way with assistive AI in there is I just say something like, hey, get all of the cards, move them over to the right. The ones that are at risk, make them red. The ones that are on target, make them green. And then prioritize them, order them by priority. And it would just do all that. Those are all things that you could do manually if you knew where to click, but it can just do that for you. So it's like, it's becoming the assistant. It's very intuitive that way. The third bucket we talk about as interrogative. And interrogative is like this query pattern where the answer to your question is explicitly found on that canvas or in the data associated with that canvas. And so you can ask a question like, hey, how many senior engineers are working on our most important project? And the AI could answer that question for you explicitly. There's a discrete answer to that question. And then the fourth bucket we think about is inferential AI. And you can imagine this in a team setting. Maybe the AI is participating in the meeting with you. And so as a team, you're asking questions, and maybe you come up with a question together in that meeting of how might we speed up this process? And the inferential AI, like the answer to that question isn't explicitly found on the canvas you're working on or in the data associated, but could be inferred with some analysis or some logic applied. And so what that might look like is how might we speed up this process by 10%? It's going to find the likely constraints in that process, look for common ways to offset those bottlenecks, come back with a few recommendations, and what the likely impact and outcome of those implementations would be on this process. That's a pretty sophisticated thing for an AI to be able to do, and so that's the inferential AI. And we think all those things are attainable, and all those can happen in the meeting context. They can happen, as I work individually to go through it, and that's kind of our, how we think about the world and how we can drive it forward and make it really tangible for people.
That sounds amazing. Okay, Thomas.
Sure. Yeah, agreed. Amazing. I think I'll try to build on that answer a bit. We may be entering, well, I think we are entering a period where some of the technologies that were just mentioned do apply to the meeting context. 6 months ago or 12 months ago, we were in a world where a lot of AI products were coming out, and it wasn't quite clear what's meaningful, what's applicable. And now we're getting to a time where we can think about AI applied to the context of meeting and collaboration. And the lens I would urge folks to think about is quality. And so when we think about bringing AI to the meeting context, how can we increase the quality of the communication happening? How can we raise the bar in terms of what the experience is like inside of those meetings? And it can be done in a few ways, and these are just thought starters, but I would break it down into before the meeting or prep, during the meeting, as you're actively in conversation or collaboration, and then after the meeting in terms of why did we have the meeting, what's supposed to happen in follow-up. And so if we look at before the meeting, I think generative AI is a slam dunk here. We can prepare more thoughtful, more meaningful presentation material. We can actually lean on AI to plan meetings ahead of time and keep us honest in terms of the agendas that we are running through as a group when we do spend that valuable time together. And so pre-meeting, I think the tools available to us on a generative AI basis and some of the cool pieces that we saw from Duet AI earlier in the week offer meeting hosts and attendees the opportunity to improve the inputs to the meeting. And then once folks get there and they're in the room, I think the idea of bringing AI to create better focus in the room, it is really a big one. And we heard about AI to improve meeting equity. We also have seen this week, I think, awesome examples of improving image and sound quality to have a more true conversation with those folks you're in conversation with. And then what got me excited across this week was seeing a lot of the updates to automated meeting notes, automated meeting summarization, these tools that give participants confidence to be fully present in a meeting, in conversation, and comfortable knowing that they're not going to miss anything. And so I think enabling those tools for employees is a big piece of helping to drive quality inside the meeting experience with AI. And it all leads to, this notes comment kind of takes us to after the meeting. We should be leaning on these tools to keep us accountable. We don't want to be having meetings, the classic meeting where a day later people follow up and don't know why we met or what we're supposed to do next. We should be leaning on AI to keep us accountable, and hopefully, that experience of getting feedback from your meeting in a punchy and powerful way does train people to, come back to the front of that cycle I just discussed and put more effort into the upfront preparation, and the rest will follow.
The AI is training us.
A little bit.
All right. Brian, how do you think about AI in meetings?
Yeah, so Dan painted a great picture of kind of the art of the possible of AI, and Thomas was talking about a couple different aspects, and I'm going to latch on to one specifically, the post-meeting aspect. Transcription is something that's been around for a little while with full remote participants. But again, as we have this hybrid environment, we start to pull people back into the office. Transcription has some challenges inside a meeting room where you have multiple people and identifying who's actually saying what, right? Attributing what's being said to who's saying it inside that meeting room. And that's where AI is coming in. Again, that video and the audio AI. We're leveraging the audio to understand the direction that something's being said. We're leveraging video to look in that direction, identify who that is that's actually saying that, and then attribute that to them, that person in the transcription of that meeting. But that's happening right now. The next step of that is applying large language models and some of the capabilities that Dan spoke about. How do we take that transcription and how do we make it relevant to people who aren't in that meeting? So for example, if your manager was in a meeting and your manager was talking about something, you probably want to know what it was they were saying, especially if there were action items and ownership items that were coming out of that your manager might have said, hey, so-and-so on my team will take that. Well, you really want to know that, and you want to avoid a potentially embarrassing situation where you were identified as an owner of an action item and maybe your manager forgot to tell you that. I know that's never happened to anyone before, but that's where AI can help in a situation like that. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. With AI, if we know who's saying what, and we can use AI from a video standpoint to actually understand engagement or sentiment on someone's face when something's being said. So if you can pair those two things together, you can start to use AI in a proactive way to educate employees, right? To proactively let them know after a presentation that they provided or a meeting that they were talking in and presenting or putting forward an idea, you can actually let them know, potentially let them know what was the reaction of some of the people in the room to some of the things they said, and then potentially what could be a more effective way to present that idea, right? So then we're taking AI and we're using AI to actually help improve our employees' communication. And by improving the employees' communication, we make more effective, more productive employees overall. So that's the next step. That's the evolution of where we're seeing AI in the meeting room space.
Brian, I was just imagining a snore score at the end of my meeting. I hope you don't do that.
Well, you know, if I was putting someone to sleep, I think I'd rather have AI tell me that than my manager. So.
Okay.
There are partners who are building things like that, for sure. Like on our platform, we're seeing partners who are analyzing, like you just said, people's engagement level, what their facial expressions are. And I did hear, if you're moving your head more, that it's like your audience is engaged versus like if they're really still on video, it means they're not really, they're doing other things. Great, thank you. Well, thank you, Thomas, Brian, Dan, for all of your insight. It's really interesting to hear the different perspectives you guys have. I know you're in different parts of the business, and but sort of all working on different elements of meeting, and so it's great to hear your latest thoughts on that. There is more you can check out on the Workspace marketplace online. Dan mentioned Lucid has a bunch of add-ons there. A lot of our partners are in the marketplace there. And there are also demos. I know the expo hall is closing out, but there are some demos you can ask to see as well for some of our partners here. So please go down and check that out. Please give a round of applause to our panelists today. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be around if you would like to talk. Thank you for coming.